It happened on a warm, bright afternoon when everything in the world looked calm, almost deceptively peaceful. Sunlight poured through the trees as if the day itself had promised goodness, yet somewhere inside those school walls, a storm was quietly building. And when Rowan Carver, a gentle, hard-working father who had never once raised his voice in anger, stepped onto the school grounds that day, he had no idea that his heart was about to be shaken in a way he would never forget. He thought he was simply dropping off a lunchbox his daughter had forgotten. But within minutes, he would come face to face with something that left him breathless, frozen in place, and questioning how such cruelty could be hiding behind smiling hallways. If you believe the world still needs kindness, compassion, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. And before we continue, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Rowan had always been a devoted single father to his 12-year-old daughter, Arya. After losing his wife unexpectedly 2 years earlier, life had rearranged itself into quiet routines and tender responsibilities. Every morning before school, he braided Arya's hair, packed her lunch, and whispered a promise that she was safe, loved, and never alone. He worked 2 jobs, yet he never let exhaustion overshadow the warmth he tried to bring into Arya's world. She was his compass, the reason he stood back up whenever life pushed him to his knees. So when she left home that morning with a distracted frown and forgot her lunch on the kitchen counter, he didn't think much of it. Children had busy minds, after all. He grabbed the lunchbox during his break and drove straight to her school. But as he walked through the halls, a strange heaviness wrapped around him, an unsettling stillness that tightened in his chest. When Rowan approached Arya's classroom, he heard a tremble in her voice, a kind of fear he had never heard before. Inside, Arya stood near her desk with her hands clutched nervously to her chest. Several students watched with wide, uncertain eyes. And right in front of her, a teacher, Ms. Halden, stood towering, face tight with anger, her voice sharp like chipped glass. Rowan froze behind the doorway, trying to understand what was happening. Arya wasn't a troublemaker. She wasn't loud or disrespectful. She was the kind of child who apologized even when something wasn't her fault. Yet here she was, shrinking under the weight of an adult's fury. The classroom felt too bright, too exposed, the midday sun casting shadows across Arya's trembling shoulders. Ms. Halden raised her hand in a gesture that was not a strike, but carried enough aggression to make every child flinch. She scolded Arya for something Rowan couldn't yet grasp, a missing assignment, a misunderstanding, or perhaps the teacher's own frustration spilling over. But it wasn't the scolding that broke him. It was seeing how small Arya looked, how her eyes flickered with a silent plea she didn't dare voice. Rowan felt his heartbeat tremble, not with anger, but with a deep, cracking ache that only a parent could understand. He stepped inside slowly, almost afraid of what he might do or say if he moved too quickly. The room stilled. Arya looked up with startled eyes that glistened with unshed tears. Ms. Halden straightened, startled by his sudden presence, but Rowan didn't focus on her. He went straight to Arya, kneeling to her level. In that moment he saw everything written across her face, the strain of trying to stay composed, the fear of disappointing him, the hurt of feeling humiliated in front of her classmates. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her back into safety. The children around them watched the scene unfold with heavy silence, unsure whether they were witnessing something ordinary or something incredibly important. Inside, Rowan's thoughts spiraled. How long had she been facing this? Had he missed the signs? Had she been carrying the weight alone because she didn't want to trouble him? He realized then that Arya had been quieter lately, spending longer in her room, hesitating before answering simple questions about school. At the time he had brushed it aside, children had off days. But now, seeing her trembling like a leaf, he wished he had looked deeper, listened harder, asked more gently. The guilt wrapped around him like chains. Ms. Halden attempted to explain herself, her tone stiff, insisting she had done nothing wrong and that Arya's behavior had warranted correction. Yet Rowan sensed something else, impatience, frustration, a tendency to push too hard without understanding the fragility of children's hearts. Her words blurred because all Rowan could focus on was Arya's shallow breathing as she tried not to cry. He stood up slowly, not raising his voice, yet carrying a strength that filled the entire room. He made it clear that no child should ever feel this way, afraid, singled out, or emotionally cornered by the very person meant to protect them. The students listened with wide eyes, watching a father defend his daughter not with fury, but with dignity. The principal arrived shortly after, having been alerted by the commotion. Rowan carefully explained everything he had witnessed, not exaggerating, not accusing unfairly, simply speaking from the raw truth of a father's heart. And as Arya stood quietly beside him, clutching the lunchbox he'd brought, the principal's expression softened with concern. Actions were taken, conversations were opened, and for the first time in a long while, Rowan saw relief beginning to return to his daughter's eyes. When they finally stepped outside into the bright afternoon sunlight, Arya leaned into her father with a long, trembling breath. Rowan didn't ask her to explain. He didn't push her to tell him every detail. He simply wrapped his arm around her and held her close, wishing he could absorb every fear she had ever felt. And in that stillness, he promised himself that he would always show up, always listen, always see her, even in the moments when she fell silent. If this story has touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps us continue creating meaningful stories that inspire and heal.